Hey, Mr. Howe.
Mr. Howe. Mr. Howe.
Mr. Howe.
Mr. Howe.
Mr. Howe.
Mr. Howe. Mr. Howe. Mr. Howe.
Mr. Howe.
Mr. Howe.
Happy Principal Appreciation Week, and I can't think of anyone that we should celebrate more than our tall, amazing Mr. Howe. He is the best principal that there is. The reason why I think that is because he thinks everyone is important. He loves the students, he loves his teachers, he loves the parents, he believes in all of us, and because of that, we want to give him our best self.
My favorite story with Mr. Howe was the day after I started track. My legs were super sore, and my friend challenged me to a race. Mr. Howe came out of nowhere and said, "All right, I'll race you too." And he beat me by a lot. It was embarrassing.
I really like Mr. Howe, and he's really kind and caring.
Mr. Howe is the best principal ever because he helps us and he walks around the school and the lunchroom.
Thank you, Mr. Howe, for being really nice in the hallways.
Mr. Howe is a very kind person. He's always smiling no matter what, and he's very helpful. So what I love is that he is just a very positive, upbeat person.
Mr. Howe is a great principal because he's always kind to everybody. I've known him since the 3rd grade. Every year he's let us duct tape him to a metal pole just for fun.
I appreciate that you try to play Foursquare with us.
I like Mr. Howe's principal because he's nice and he's funny.
I like Mr. Howe because he's been helpful in class with me. And
Thank you, Mr. Howe, for your humor, and I love your perm.
I like how Mr. Howe goes around the hallways trying to help everyone else find their way if they're new students.
Thank you, Mr. Howe, for always being there for us.
Mr. Howe is so awesome that I don't know how to describe him.
Thank you, Mr. Howe, for trying to keep all of us kids here at Westlake entertained.
You really try and get to know all of your students, and I think that's amazing.
Something that I love about Principal Howe is how positive and awesome he is. I think he is the absolute perfect principal.
Mr. Howe's jokes, because one time he couldn't remember my name and he called me short. So then I replied, "How's the air up there?"
Thank you, Mr. Howe, for being so understanding.
hey, Mr. Howe, I like that your hair sometimes looks like macaroni.
Thank you, Mr. Howe, for being the best principal ever.
Thank you, Mr. Howe.
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 Thank you, Mr. Howe. Thank you, Mr. Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Howe.